The Laureates and Leaders for Children Summit is going to take place in Delhi with three reasons. One is that we need a strong moral force, a strong moral voice that cannot be ignored by the governments, by the society and the corporate world, even by the United Nations agencies. Why I am saying this, that for last 36 years of my struggle against exploitation of children, I learned that we have been able to enact new laws. We have been able to change constitutions. For example, in India, we organized the long marches across the country, and that has resulted in the amendment of India's constitution, making child education as fundamental right. Similarly, there was no international law to combat the worst forms of child labor like slavery, trafficking, in the children used for petty crimes and things like that. So we organized a worldwide march across 103 countries in 1998, global march against child labor with this demand, and we succeeded. And this new international law has been enacted, adopted by the international community. Of course, significant progress has been made due to the laws and constitutional provisions, but that is not enough. Another dimension of this is that world has never been so rich, so advanced in technology, so fast, so connected, which is today. But the world's children have never faced those vital challenges which they are facing today. The traditional and systemic exploitation has always been there, and it is still there, like child slavery, trafficking of children, child prostitution, child labor, etc. But millions of children who are born and grew up in conflict areas, in insurgencies or in war-prone areas, they are victims of multiple vulnerabilities and problems. Many of them are forced to leave their countries. Their limbs and their souls are being ruined, and their parents and family members are either killed, or the children were forced to move, and they are becoming refugees, and many of the refugees' children are stolen and sold for child prostitution or forced labor and other things. So millions of children are facing these kind of problems in the world. I have been to some places where I spend my time with refugee children in Germany, in some camps, as well as in Turkey. And I spoke to those children and found that they live in trauma, they live in fear, they live in uncertainty, though they have some hope that one day, if they are given proper education and protection, they will go back homes. So a lot of work has to be done to protect these children. We have also seen that how millions of children are being brainwashed by the fundamentalist and fanatic forces, and they are pushed to become not only the terrorists or criminals, but also to become suicidal bombers, which is happening with 12, 13, 14-year-old children. So we realize that there is a very serious need of strong moral force, a moral voice, a moral platform that cannot be ignored by any country, by any intergovernmental organization, by society, as well as by the corporate world. So I started speaking to some Nobel laureates, and I realized that however they are well known for their accomplishments in different fields, and they are well respected people, but they do have an element of compassion. They are also moral forces, moral authorities, but that has not been yet harnessed and channelized for the betterment of children in the world who are left out and most marginalized. So I started, provoking their conscience in a way, and found that many of them are prepared to do something. Similarly, I spoke to a number of other leaders, some former prime ministers, some presidents, former presidents, and so on, and they have shown interest to assemble, to come together for the cause of these children in the world. So that was another reason. And the third reason was that the world has seen enough and experienced enough and experiencing enough of this globalization of market and economy and products and so on. But there is a need, perhaps serious need, of globalization of compassion. And India is the most appropriate land. This is the land of wisdom. That is the land of compassion and global familyhood and all those great values. So let us start something from India's land. So the combination of these factors prompted me to this idea of organizing the first ever Laureates and Leaders for Children Summit in New Delhi. Well, every single rupee or even penny is earned out of any kind of organized crime is black money. Particularly child labor, child trafficking or human trafficking, slavery, child prostitution are never done through the bank transactions. They generate black money and they flourish on black money. They further fuels black money generation as well as the corruption and crime. So that makes a vicious circle. Black money, organized crime and corruption are three corners of one triangle that makes a full circle, and they are causes and consequences of each other, and we have to fight it out. So I supported the Prime Minister's move of this demonetization. I am supportive of few laws. Like the previous government has made POCSO, that's very, very good law, strong law. However, its implementation is under question and it's a serious concern for me. Similarly, the Juvenile Justice Act, which was enacted by this government, is a very progressive, very good law, and its rules are also equally progressive. But the child labor law is quite weak law, and that has been my concern and is my concern even now. This law was enacted, the original law was enacted in 1986 after a long struggle. I spearheaded that struggle and many others joined in it. And the law was enacted in 1986. That was a weak, poor law, rather regressive law. Then we fought for 30 years for a new law or an amendment in that law. Finally, the amendment came, and that also has some regressive elements. So that is not a perfect law. Now we are in very intense consultation with the highest authorities, including the ministers, for making more clear, progressive rules in this law. So if we have strong rules, then we are able to address some of those lacunae which exist in this law. So I'm quite hopeful that those things would be incorporated in the rules. It's again ironical that India, being the largest democracy in the world, as well as the youngest country in the world, we don't prioritize our children in budgetary allocations. So during all these years, I've been struggling and meeting and talking to prime ministers for last 25-30 years and demanding that there should be adequate investment on our children. But unfortunately, that remains between 2, 3, 4% of our GDP. And that is really a serious issue for me, because India has 40% of its population below the age of 18. But what we spend only 4% on education, healthcare and protection combined. And that has to be changed. And I hope that as the new trends in development are emerging, the government of India is equally serious about the sustainable development goals, then they have to prioritize the issues of children and budgetary allocations. No, I don't agree with that. I am always a hopeful person and always ambitious. Then what makes me optimistic is the zeal of children. I travel across India and I travel across the world, and I go to the remotest places and interact with the poorest of the poor children, the children who are excluded in the societies. And when I meet and interact with them, I realize that there is a spark in them. There is a quest for freedom, there is a quest for learning, there is a quest for change in them. We have to listen to that voice of these children in the world and in my country, in India too. Young girls are rising against child marriages. The boys wanted to progress and they wanted to study further. This is their demand in the remote villages. They don't want to follow some of those norms which have been there for ages. They are revolting. So I think we should respect the voices of these children. And what I need, I appeal everyone to be those ears which can listen to that most beautiful music, that most beautiful sound which is coming out of the pure hearts of millions of our children, and that surpasses all the noise of hatred and violence which we see in our society today. We have to listen to our children. Please listen to children.